Representative Lori Trahan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So tell us what your thoughts are on the results of the election this week.
Well, I will take this opportunity because first and foremost, I'm so grateful to all the folks in the 3rd District who cast their vote for me. And it comes from a place where elected officials should do everything possible to improve the lives of the people that they serve. And, I've woken up every day over the last 2 years with that exact mentality. And I'm looking forward to continuing that for another 2 years. But yes, the election across the country has been something that we've spent the whole week following. I can't believe how many folks were glued to either their televisions or their phones or iPads because, it was, as we predicted, an election week and not an election day. And even though we gave that advice to sort of manage expectations and be patient, it's still so hard on Tuesday evening not to, follow state by state and all those numbers coming in. But, with the just incredible amount of mail-in ballots, across the country, people, exercising that method of voting to, not put themselves in harm's way and maybe have access to voting where they might not have before. Those take time to count. And so I'm elated of the way the election turned out. And it was a nice weekend to get the word that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be in the White House in January.
Well, what do you think the impact is on having a woman finally in the executive branch?
We're still celebrating that here in my home. As you know, I've got 2 young daughters. They're 6 and 10 years old. And I'm telling you, on Saturday night, we watched those speeches. And, I think Wendy, you and I, and so many women our generation, we've been waiting this moment. But to see the excitement in my kids' eyes, it brought a whole new meaning in terms of what's possible, what this country stands for, the ceiling that was just shattered, having Kamala Harris in the White House. It's so great for women everywhere, for women of color, for women of immigrants. It was just, it's fantastic. And I commend Joe Biden for picking Kamala as his running mate, but also going into this presidency as true partners.
Very good. Well, in your first term, the House passed so much legislation. I know that you worked very hard on legislation that never saw the light of day in the Senate. Do you think that there will be a change and more cooperation now?
I sure hope so. I think what hangs in the balance right now is the upper chamber. And we have 2 runoff elections now in January in the state of Georgia, and that will actually determine whether we have a Democratic majority. And that will mean a big difference in terms of the legislation and the cadence at which we can work. But there's no question that, many of the legislation that we passed in my first 2 years, much of it was bipartisan. Folks forget that, some of it was just common sense, right? Reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, the Equality Act, ensuring that we have background checks, and so much more. So, I think we're going to have an immediate litmus test, when we go back this month to see how negotiations are for a coronavirus relief package. And then certainly we have to pass a budget before the December 11th deadline. And so we're going to get a sense of, how these chambers are going to work together and what changes as we, look at 21 and beyond. But I'm hopeful. I think I've said on your show before, I have a lot of legislation that I co-lead with Republicans, and no one wants to be part of a Congress that's, in gridlock. We all want to get to work.
Yeah, it's been in gridlock for so long. What are the specific legislation pieces that you are hoping will pass that you've been sponsoring?
You know, one of the first things that I'd like to see move, just because we got so close this past Congress, was my bill to require mandatory training for, physicians and anybody in the medical community to break the stigma and have conversations with their patients about substance use disorder, and to also have the tools to treat it with medication-assisted treatment. We know it works. We have a lot of co-sponsors, both Democrat and Republican, and I think that's a bill that we should be able to get over the line in this next Congress. Certainly, we've done a lot of work on ensuring that we stop the sewerage overflows into the Merrimack River. This is a problem all over the country, and cities like Lowell and Lawrence and Haverhill, they don't have the money to make these investments in these water infrastructure upgrades. They can't even afford loans because these are billions of dollars, and so our legislation sets up a grant program like we used to have in the 1950s, and we're going to appropriate money towards those water infrastructure upgrades. And then certainly we're very, very close to passing pipeline safety legislation after the Merrimack Valley gas explosions. We were able to change our state laws here in Massachusetts, and we need to do the same thing on a federal level to ensure that a tragedy like that never hits another community in our country. But we do have a lot of work to do. As you know, I sit on the Education and Labor Committee, and so really looking forward to taking up an apprenticeship bill, continuing our work on vocational and technical training, and making sure that lane is nice and wide for our students, and making sure that college is affordable for our students. So we have a lot of work ahead, and I'm so motivated to get back to it.
That's so great. Now, a lot of people really liked President Trump's executive orders that did away with a lot of Obama's regulations. Do you think that President Biden will use that same tool to reverse some of the things that President Trump did?
Well, I do think that there are some executive orders that the Vice President Biden is already considering reversing. One is entering back into the Paris Climate Accord, and one is ensuring that we give dreamers the citizenship that they deserve. So I think that we're already sort of getting some information about what those early actions will look like in the first 100 days. And I think those are in step with public opinion in this country. There's always been bipartisan support for Dreamers and for DACA. There's always, been bipartisan support for us to combat climate change and for us to reestablish our global leadership role. So I think that those two things are probably the most immediate and very important for us to get back on track.
The House Democrats lost some seats this time. Do you think that's going to make a difference in how things proceed in the House?
Well, there's still a number of races that haven't been called, and so we're looking forward to sort of seeing what we net out to in terms of our majority. But we will have the majority in the House, which is so important. And when I think about the class I came in with in 2018, there were so many new members who won, Democratic members who won in districts that Trump carried in 2016, and they were unbelievable candidates. They were unbelievable members, but they were in very tough districts. And so I think we knew that we were going to, lose a few great members just because of the competitiveness of those districts. But, I do think that we have a lot of momentum. We passed a lot of great legislation in these last 2 years, and we have a good roadmap ahead. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to protect people's health care. I mean, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the fact that we were even discussing or debating whether people with pre-existing conditions would still have access to their health care is criminal. So, I think the first thing that we're going to do is just give that assurance to the American people so that they know that their health care will be there for them as we combat COVID-19. One of the things that I really enjoyed hearing in this last week was when President-elect Joe Biden, when he talks about the importance of having leaders that put the country before party, who seek to unite rather than divide, and who serve not just red states or blue states, but the United States. It's such an important message for folks to hear right now because, elections are hard. If your candidate doesn't win, if you yourself don't win, I mean, it is after a long, hard-fought battle. And I think right now what people want is not to feel like winners or losers or us against them or red versus blue. I mean, we're all in this together, and we have a lot of work to do to repair some of the divisiveness and damage that's been done these last 4 years. But, there's nothing more noble for us to work on right now than to unite our country and for us to really listen. We are going into a session where, the American public is divided, and we need to make sure that we're not only legislating and leading, but we're also listening so that we do repair our country. And I'm really looking forward to that opportunity ahead.
What can we do about so many people who think that the election was stolen, who've been egged on by media and by the president to not trust the election?
Yeah, look, what we've heard from the president and his campaign, and even on the shows over the weekend, and his family, it's reckless. I have to say, I think it's irresponsible, and I think it's dangerous. They've rather than let the election, sort of play out with grace, like every one of his predecessors has done. The president has shown that he has no plans to put the good of the country before his own personal or public political interests. But the most important thing I think for folks to realize, though, is that our democracy is alive and it's well and it's working. The election officials, whether they were Republican or Democratic, they're counting every last vote. The election is going to be certified. And by the way, with the highest number of votes ever cast in our country. And so, to invalidate the election, I think is a really dangerous thing to do. We have a process. We are a country of laws. We're going to, continue to get to a place where we're certifying those results. And we, like I said, we always knew, because so many people had so many options, with early voting being extended, mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. People had more options to vote, which is a good thing. If anything, we should be continuing that trend to make it more accessible for everyone to vote. And so I think we just have to, stay the course, and we'll get there. I think that people will see, it'll be very self-evident that this process wasn't compromised in any way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your point of view, and good luck this year in the House, and hopefully all will go well.
Thank you so much, Wendy. You take care. Stay safe.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.